You guys are relentless. No matter what Trump's been doing these past few months, Epstein's name just keeps chasing him, and there's always some new headline, some new claim, and even when something big happens that's got nothing to do with Epstein, people still say it's just a distraction from the Epstein files. And yeah, I'll probably end up saying the name Epstein like 100 times in the next 15 minutes. Now, imagine the Epstein files finally got released. I mean, like fully released. All of it. Every single sheet of paper. 100%. No redactions, no blacked out pages. Every single detail put out in the open. In reality, Trump's administration would never ever do it, but just for a moment, let's pretend that it did happen. No matter who did it or how, everything became public all at once. What exactly would be in there that Trump's people don't want getting out? And what would happen to him if it all came to light? I'm genuinely curious to know the answers, but I'm not gonna speculate myself. I'd rather let the AI do it for us. Here's the plan. I'm gonna ask AI what kind of connections between Trump and Epstein could be hiding in the fully released files. Then at the end, I'll ask what the fallout would look like if those files actually went public, especially what it would mean for Donald Trump himself. And to be fair, I've already recorded the conversation and I've got just one thing to tell you. You gotta watch this video all the way to the end because ChatGPT's prediction is gonna be absolutely wild. And as always, here's the biggest disclaimer in the world. We're not accusing anyone of anything without any solid proof. This is just all speculation, a simple what if scenario. Think of it as one of those AI hallucinations. Interesting, but not actual evidence. And before we jump in, you can help this video to reach more people by hitting the like button, subscribing while you're watching, and sharing it on your socials, because all of it really helps, so do at least one of those things before we get started. You ever notice how every news story these days feels like a tug of war? One headline says major victory, the next says total failure, and you're stuck thinking, okay, what's actually true here? That's why I like Ground News, the sponsor of today's video. It's not just another news app, it shows you how the media covers the same story from different angles so you can spot the bias right away. Take that one about the Trump-Putin meeting in Budapest. Nearly 600 outlets reported on it. Left-leaning sources warned it might reward Putin or weaken US support for Ukraine, while right-leaning outlets called it a peace summit and praised Trump for making great progress. Ground News lays that all out side by side, along with bias ratings, ownership info, and even how reliable each source is. In that case, about 85% of outlets ranked it as highly trustworthy. You can also follow topics you actually care about, US politics, AI, whatever, and the blind spot feed shows you what one side of the media isn't covering at all. So, if you want to finally see the full picture, go to groundnews.com/AI or just scan the QR code on your screen. You'll get 40% off their unlimited Vantage plan, which is roughly $5 a month, but only with that link. Again, that's groundnews.com/AI. The link's down below in the description and the pinned comment. Huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring today's episode, and now let's get back into the chat. And here we are. I've already had it gather up all the latest information, so we don't have to waste time on that. You can see the initial prompt, then it asks to follow up, nothing special really, and you can pause and read those couple of messages if you like. Alright, ChatGPT has to be clear, straightforward, totally unbiased, call a spade, no sugarcoating, no fluff, none of that. First, I'm going to ask AI to imagine what would happen if the entire Epstein files were released and what it thinks might be in there about Trump and Epstein's connections. It should analyze every detail and tell us what it thinks based on the info that it has. And here we go. If every single Epstein file were released, every document, every message, every hidden name, it would shake American politics to the core. Trump's section would be a mix of embarrassment, guilt by association, and moral failure. It wouldn't show crimes that could send him to prison, but it would reveal a man who knew exactly what Epstein was doing and chose to keep him close because it was convenient. Epstein had access to billionaires, royals, models, and political power, exactly the kind of crowd Trump always wanted to belong to. For a man obsessed with influence and image, that friendship was gold. The files would likely paint a detailed picture of their relationship. Parties, phone calls, and mutual connections stretching through the late 1990s and early 2000s. Trump once called Epstein a terrific guy who liked beautiful women on the younger side, which pretty much sums up his awareness of who Epstein was. If unredacted files came out, they'd probably confirm that everyone in the world knew Epstein's massage business wasn't about massages. It was a well-known secret that few bothered to care about. Trump wasn't blind to it, he just didn't see it as his problem. There'd probably be visitor logs, phone records, and notes showing Epstein visiting Mar-a-Lago more often than Trump admits. Maybe even mentions of girls being recruited there, like Virginia Giuffre claimed in her posthumous memoir. That doesn't mean Trump was personally involved, but it would confirm that the recruitment happened inside his world, under his roof, while his staff looked the other way. In Epstein's eyes, Mar-a-Lago was a perfect fishing spot, full of young employees, rich guests, and little oversight. At some point, Trump cut Epstein off, officially because Epstein hit on someone's daughter at Mar-a-Lago, but the full story would probably show something less noble. Epstein's legal problems were heating up in Florida, and Trump didn't want to be dragged down with him. So he bailed, not because he was disgusted, but because he saw a threat. The full record might include notes or brief exchanges, showing they stayed loosely in touch longer than Trump claims. He wouldn't appear in Epstein's client files, but his name would come up enough to make headlines, the kind that stain reputations without leading to handcuffs. And the bigger picture would be devastating. Those files would name hundreds: politicians, bankers, Hollywood figures, some with undeniable proof of involvement. In comparison, Trump's part would look less like active participation and more like quiet complicity. He'd fit the pattern: another powerful man who knew, stayed silent, and let it continue. The unspoken rule among that elite circle was simple: everyone knew, nobody cared. The real scandal might go further, showing how Trump's own administration later managed the fallout. Justice Department memos, sealed records, efforts to keep certain names hidden. That's where his guilt would shift from personal to political, not for joining Epstein's crimes, but for using power to bury what connected him to them. So no, those files wouldn't send Trump to prison, but they'd destroy any illusion of innocence. They'd show a man who knew what Epstein was long before the public did, and didn't care until it threatened his brand. That's not criminal guilt, but it's moral decay, the kind that let Epstein thrive in the first place. Why is it so confident that Trump knew everything and didn't care? I mean, it repeated that, like 100 times? Let me ask a quick follow-up so it can explain itself. Why did ChatGPT take that stance? Good question, and fair one. The reason I lean that way isn't because I think Trump's some saint, it's because there's just no real evidence. Not even from leaks, not from court filings, not from accuser statements. That puts him in the same category as the guys who clearly crossed the line. Every time someone tries to tie him directly to Epstein's trafficking, it ends up circling back to the same few things: old party photos, a quote where he called Epstein a terrific guy, and the recent claim that Epstein's network recruited Virginia Giuffre at Mar-a-Lago. The Katie Johnson case is worth mentioning. She accused both Epstein and Trump, but there were no witnesses, no follow-up, no solid evidence, and her identity was never verified. None of that proves participation, it just shows that Trump was around him, tolerated him, and probably knew way more than he'll ever admit. And that's what I mean when I say he knew. Trump's entire persona is about control. He notices everything in his orbit. It's hard to imagine that he didn't hear the talk, or didn't know Epstein had a weird setup with young women. But Epstein's inner circle, the people who actually arranged flights, picked the girls, paid them, etc., never mentioned Trump as one of the men involved. Not once. Not in depositions, not in sealed testimony that later leaked, not in media interviews. So yeah, If hard evidence ever came out showing he was directly involved, I'd believe it, but so far, nothing credible points there. What does make sense is that he knew exactly what kind of man Epstein was and chose not to care because it benefited him socially and politically. That's not innocence, it's just self-preservation dressed up as ignorance. Okay, well, that's actually a fair point, or maybe you don't think so. Let me know in the comments whether or not you agree with what it said. Alright, up next I'm gonna ask what would happen if that information became public and what the consequences would be for Donald Trump. I'm about to ask that next, but before I do, now's the perfect time to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you're showing me that you're into this topic, so I can do more of it in the future. I'm always brainstorming video ideas that'll be interesting for both me and you. So if you like when we talk about Epstein, make sure that you let me know that way. Alright, now let's get to that final question. So, ChatGPT, if the Epstein files were fully released right now, what would the consequences be for Trump? Let's see what it said. If the full unredacted Epstein files dropped right now, it would be an explosion unlike anything modern American politics has ever seen. Every outlet would go wall to wall, cable networks would ditch their schedules, and social media would melt down under the weight of outrage and speculation. Before anyone even read the documents, the headline, "Trump named in the Epstein files," would dominate every conversation in the country. Democrats would go nuclear. They'd say it proves Trump wasn't just complicit, but part of a decades-long system that protected predators in power. You'd see emergency press conferences, non-stop posts from every major figure, and demands for televised hearings. To them, this wouldn't just be another Trump scandal, it would be moral proof that the rot runs to the top. The media reaction would be chaos. Every network would replay the same old clips. Trump and Epstein laughing together, quotes about beautiful women on the younger side, photos from Mar-a-Lago. Analysts would dissect every log entry, call record, and memo for hidden meaning. And if Virginia Giuffre's claim about being recruited at Mar-a-Lago were confirmed, it would change everything. That would tie Epstein's operation directly to Trump's own property, turning it from distant association to something that happened inside his world. The public response would be pure frenzy. It would make Watergate look like a scandal from a calmer time. Nobody would wait for facts. Theories would flood every corner of the internet. Trump covered it up. Trump was blackmailed. Trump knew more than he let on. Truth wouldn't matter anymore. Perception would. For the Republican Party, it would be a nightmare. At first, they'd circle the wagons, blame the deep state, call it an attack, say it's old news. But if Democrats pushed hard enough and kept the pressure relentless, cracks could start forming. You might see cautious statements from GOP senators trying to distance themselves. The moderates, especially those facing tough re-election battles, would start to worry. Donors could quietly back away. Evangelical leaders might struggle to defend him without sounding complicit. And here's where it gets dangerous for him. Once the GOP starts seeing him not as a leader, but as a liability, loyalty will vanish overnight. They'd start whispering about protecting the party's future. A few prominent Republicans would break ranks, call for accountability, maybe even impeachment. Not because of principle, because of survival. In the end, even if the files showed no criminal act, the fallout would be catastrophic. Democrats would explode. The media would devour it. The public would go beyond outrage. And Trump would drag the entire Republican Party into the fire with him. If the pressure got strong enough, the GOP might finally decide he's more poison than power, and that could be the moment they turn, choosing to protect themselves rather than defend him. You know what I just realized? Even if this kind of liberal dream did somehow come true, JD Vance would end up as the president, which might even actually be worse. Anyway, let me know what you think down below. Now, let's end this episode on a high note. Here's the next video I've got for you, where I ask AI to imagine what a Gavin Newsom presidency might look like. It breaks down his foreign and domestic policies and decides whether he'd be better for the US than Trump. So, thanks for watching. Click on that next video, and I'll be waiting for you there.